Hey, what's going on, everybody? I want to welcome to you guys to the Winning by Sending podcast, a podcast that's for Carolina Movement, our gathering that's coming up in October 7th and 8th. And we have one of our favorite guests, one of the actual founders of Carolina Movement. His name is Mike Pittman. Mike Pittman is also the director of Send to NC in North Carolina, also started one of our churches called Vertical Church in Lumberton, North Carolina. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you, bro. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to kind of help me. I mean, I know you, like I know Mike. I've known Mike for years, but I only know that
Yep.
I know this story 100%. But
hmm
so like when you think about church planning, obviously this is a church planning podcast. Like, how did that become personal for you? Like what happened for Mike to get on fire about planting churches?
Yeah. It's pretty wild, man. I contracted the church planting virus early into my ministry. When I was joining the staff at Hyde Park Baptist Church in August of 1999, my pastor, Pastor Dennis Harrell, who would eventually become an elder at Vertical Church, um, he asked me to read Purpose Driven Church, as it was a staff study that had been going on. So the story of planting Saddleback Church. Um, I was fascinated as I'm reading this book because I never thought about the fact that churches start. My whole life, churches are just there. They're, they're on the corners. They're in the places. I never thought about how did churches actually get started. And of course, Purpose Driven Church is that story of how they started church. So I was like going, wow, that's pretty neat. Being a starter, I'm kind of a starter type guy. Um, it just sat there in my heart for a while. Um, but serving Hyde Park, and it was Hyde Park will always be such a amazing part of our story because actually it was kind of like a revitalization. They weren't a small church; they weren't dying by any means, but they were just kind of a stagnant family church. They were just your average church. They were doing pretty well. I mean, they probably were averaging somewhere, you know, right around 150 people a week. But when I came there to serve, it was they were really searching for something more, and just really felt like there was a next season for the church. It was just a really great time. We saw revival. I've had the privilege of walking through a incredible revival season, very much like what your church is walking through right now, Corey. And but serving an established church kind of showed me that sometimes it's hard to reach people in churches that have an established reputation in
Hmm.
their neighborhood. And even though we were reaching people like crazy, we didn't necessarily have the best reputation right there in our neighborhood. And even though we were growing, I just always saw that reaching truly lost people from established churches could be difficult. A lot of times, because I think a lot of times the reason that people don't go to church is because they've been. And so with that in mind, I think that comment, that statement that Peter Wagner made years ago, that church planting is one of the most effective forms of evangelism. I think that just really resonated with me early on. That being said, my church planting journey was about 6 years before I actually stepped out to plant a church. I served that church, by the way. I served Hyde Park for 11 years.
Talk about, so maybe there's some folks that don't know, see Peter Wagner's statement. What is his statement, and why did it hold so much weight for you?
Uh, yeah, well, I mean, the statement is church planting is one of the most effective forms of evangelism. And as a church that was reaching people, but I really like we did a really good job of reigniting people's faith. And we were that church that once God set you on fire, you looked around your family and you're inviting your brother-in-law or your cousin or maybe your next door neighbor or something like that. But I found that a lot of the people that we were reaching in that church, and I believe with all my heart that they needed to be reached, no doubt about it, but they seem to be more de-churched than unchurched. And so in that story, like I just always had this deep desire for us to be that church that was just really knocking on the doors and just reaching people that come and see ministry wasn't going to necessarily reach. You know what I mean? Come and see, like you're inviting your friends to church, and so come and see, and so they come and go. Okay, I like this, and we'll stay around. I just felt like there was a lot deeper calling in my personal ministry than just hanging out in that space. And I found that the established church that I was serving, there was just always a desire to reach people that I kind of felt like they probably would never reach.
And you planted a church. What was the name of that church and what year was that?
Vertical Church. We stepped out in 2011 and we launched in the first weekend of February, Super Bowl Sunday in 2011.
And how many churches came along Vertical Church to help plant Vertical Church?
Um, Let me see. Zero. There were no churches.
That was a setup, folks, by
Yeah, I know.
the
Corey did know that part of the story. Yeah.
way. But
Yeah.
why is that funny in relation to today, man? Like, why is that funny? And like,
Well,
how did that shape you to want to be a part of church planting? The fact that you had very little support from churches. Now, we're not talking denominations. We know our denomination did
yes.
fantastic, but
NC
but
Baptist was
yeah,
probably our only supporter in that whole deal. But the reason it was so important to me was because in those, I told you my journey was 6 years. So I was a student of church planting. I went to all the conferences. I was reading all the books. I was, man, blogs were huge in that season. There were a ton of
don't
church
reveal
planter
your age. Don't
blogs.
reveal your age,
Yep.
there, sir. Yeah,
And man, you guys know my age. But anyway, yeah, so I was such a student. And one of the guys that I read multiple books by was Bob Roberts from Texas. And Bob had a couple of really influential books in my life. But the thing that Bob really drove deep into my heart, he and Ed Stetzer as well, was just the fact that there were no church planting movements in North America. He was talking about all the church planting movements around the world and how the gospel was growing and going, but not in North America. And just the fact that they drove deep the fact that churches plant churches. And I believed it, man. I was just in this school of the fact that I felt like churches plant churches. The church that I was serving, Pastor Dennis he and I had been talking about planting a church for about 2 years before this happened. Like he sent me to church planting conferences, and he enabled and encouraged me to grow in what this meant, what this looked like. And so, as this is going on, and I'm really feeling this tug of the fact that churches are supposed to, the healthy way and the biblical way of seeing churches get started was that churches are raising up from within and sending out. And I didn't see it happening. It
yeah.
wasn't happening in our life. And I didn't see it happening around. So even before we were having weekly services, I'm in 14 meetings and I'm talking to the people that are jumping on board to be a part of Vertical about the churches that we would plant. And it was kind of like, I kind of felt like sometimes, can we just start this one before we're worried about the churches that we're going to send out from here? But from the very beginning, before we were even called Vertical Church, Donnie and I were praying about what it would look like for us to replant southeastern North Carolina with gospel teaching, life-giving churches.
And how many years did you get the privilege of actually being the lead pastor of Vertical Church?
Yeah, so I was at Vertical for 9 years.
9 years. And those
Nine
nine
years.
years, do you have an idea of how many churches you guys started and how many you guys helped start? Any
Yeah.
idea?
I can't tie it to the 9 years because I don't remember it like this. I just did these numbers last year, and we've been a part of from Vertical and churches that we've partnered with. There are 17 church starts from Massachusetts to North Carolina that we've been able to be a part of, and your church being one of those,
Well,
and
I
the
was getting ready to
churches that
ask
you
if you
had
had a
planted.
favorite. I was getting ready to ask if you had a favorite church that you guys helped start, but we won't. Well, I digress. We won't.
Yeah,
We won't have to
yeah.
go into that. So 17 churches. Like, so talk about the transition between leaving vertical and going to, at that time, NC Baptist, now Send NC. Like, what was
Hmm.
the thought process going into a very different environment from creative, entrepreneurial to, still creative, still entrepreneurial, but also has a lot of different moving pieces because it's a
Yeah.
historical organization and lots of things
Hmm.
going on in in that regard.
Yeah, man. Corey, in 2016, I laid my yes on the table. Um, just I don't something about turning 46 years old, just thinking about the future, starting to see some gray hair, realizing even though I still feel like the young guy, right? And all of a sudden I'm looking in the mirror, I'm going, I'm not the young guy anymore. And there's a whole generation of guys behind me. I mean, which would have been like guys like you, and I just remember just feeling like God was calling me to invest my life in the future of the church in North Carolina and beyond, right? So I lay my yes on the table. Things started happening. In 2015, Chris Hankins and myself, we had the opportunity to lay the foundation for Carolina Movement. It was really I mean, to be honest, we were just looking for a way to help planners be able to get started and have more people on their team. And we also were looking to create a tribe of church planners here in North Carolina. And so, as that happens, I just was seeing it was pointed out to me by others that my influence was just growing. And man, all of a sudden, I'm just connected with all these guys all over North Carolina and beyond, right? But just about planting and what the Lord was doing. And so in August of 2018, I get a call from Chuck Register, who asked me, would I be interested? Would I please pray about being the next director of church planting for NC Baptist. And of course, I'm like, I'll pray. But I mean, I believe I probably talked to you in this period of time and different ones. I mean, you and different people were going, you have to be the next director of church planning. And so I had all these people in my ear about it, but I honestly was like, there's no way this is ever going to happen. They're not going to hire like somebody like me because I'm not that type, right? I just felt like I was a little bit too out of the box. But it appears, I mean, that's kind of what they were looking for. They weren't scared by the vision that I brought to the table and what I wanted to see. As a matter of fact, in one of my middle interviews, it was a long time of interviews, but in one of those interviews, I kind of started it by saying when Chuck asked me for a vision of me leading church planting for North Carolina Baptist, I was like, well, first things first, we have to stop planting churches, which isn't a great way to interview to become the new director of church planting. But it was because of the way that it was like NC Baptist was the sending church, and churches had kind of, with the exception of just a few, but churches didn't plant churches because I mean, like when I talked to my associate missionary strategist in 2009 about planting a church, I said, so I don't know what to do. He said, call the Baptist State Convention, right? That's how you planted a church. You called the state convention and they would help you. And they were the recruiter and they were the trainer and the assessor. And you know what I mean?
So Mike, for clarity for some folks, because not everybody that listens is going to be familiar with
Sure.
SBC, like what is now Send NC? Like what exactly is it?
Yeah. So Send NC, I mean, to give you the official documented version, Send NC is a movement of churches on mission together, churches planting churches everywhere for everyone. So we are the church planting arm, the church planting division of North Carolina Baptist. We are a co-branded partnership between NC Baptist and the Send Network of the Southern Baptist Convention. So
And what's the
most
Send
people,
what's the Send network?
yeah, Send Network is, I mean, to be honest, it's the largest church planting network in North America. I mean, by far. And And just a great organization. And like we are the church planning division of NC Baptist, they are the church planning division of the North American Mission Board. And so, we planted all of us together. We planted close to 700 churches last year, which is like mind blowing. I think the closest to us planted somewhere around 300. And so, just seeing like the movement of what's happening, and it's really exciting what's happening in Send NC and Send Network, man, we're just seeing a mobilization movement happen where churches are planting churches, right? And tools are being developed that are really helping churches to grow in that area. Because, like I said,
What are
churches were
what?
not planting churches, right? They
Yep.
weren't. And so, to go back to that earlier story real quick, like you've been there every step of the way, so you know this. Like churches planting churches has always been my heartbeat. And I've always been a proponent of how do we help churches to get out of the starting blocks and understand their role in raising up and sending out planters. And so, when I get there, there's like five sending churches in North Carolina that I can identify. I mean, that really meet the standard of what a sending church is. And man, it's like we have to figure out how to change the narrative and begin reaching churches and helping them to understand their role in planting.
Yeah, so I'll piggyback on that because the whole Carolina Movement statement is that we want to help every church be a church planting church because
Yep.
every time at one point everybody was a church plant. So going into that culture and seeing so few, like what have been some of the things that you have been able to introduce to established churches? And I mean, you and I both know we both worked for NC Baptist back then,
Hmm.
532, 5% cooperative program, 3%
Hmm.
association, 2% to a church planting your choice. I don't know if that's still a language, but I know that my church and the first one we planted never gave any money to a church plant. And I know that, there wasn't really any actual
Yeah.
infrastructure to give money to make that happen. Like, what are some of the things that you
Yeah.
guys are seeing and changing to make sure that does change?
Yeah. So first of all, you probably remember when you went to church planter boot camp back in the day, like I did. Ken Holland, who was a trainer that used to work with us at North Carolina Baptist. I remember him in my church planter boot camp saying, "We want you. We don't just want you to plant a church. We want you to plant a church that will plant churches." And everybody in the room said, "Amen." Right?
Amen. Yeah.
Right. And Donnie and I are sitting there and we're going, yeah, man, this is our people, right? Because that was the language that we were always speaking. But then Corey, like I turned around a couple of years later and we planted our first church 25 months after launching Vertical Lumberton. And and then in 2015, we planted our second church to the west of us over in Pembroke. And I kind of looked back, and I realized that nobody else that was in that room that said "Amen" had planted a church, just us. So with that, that was kind of a lot of the conversation that you and I were having back in those days, and I was having it with people like Chris and different Mike McDaniel up at Summit Church. He was leading Summit. I can't remember. It wasn't collaborative, but whatever they were before Summit Collaborative. I was talking with people like Mike about that, and people like Dave Ferguson from Central, from what's it, CCC in Naperville, Illinois. So just really that conversation, able to rub elbows with people like Stetzer and different church planting leaders around the nation. We're just seeing how are we going to do that. And so I think some of the things that we've been able to change, Corey, or at least impact, is that conversation of the fact that that every church plays a part in church planting. It doesn't matter what size they are. Every church plays a role in church planting and helping to get that message out. I realized that when I went to work with NC Baptist, that the calling upon my life for this next season is going to be to change the narrative about church planting. So anytime I was given a platform and a microphone, that's all I talked about. That's still all I talk about, as you know. But I mean, that being said, like that's what we
what
were
about
doing.
the narrative? Did you feel like you had to shift? Like
Man,
what was it?
just the fact that churches do plant churches. I mean, just that Acts 11 through 13 story of how the church at Antioch got started, and what was unique about Antioch, and how God brought all these people from all over the world to this area. And so he starts this diverse church that he uses to show us multi-ethnicity, and he shows us the church, the light of the gospel shining brightly in one of the darkest places in the world, and the way that he calls that beautiful multi-ethnic leadership to give their best, and to send those guys to go out, Paul and Barnabas, to go out and to carry the gospel to other places. And so in that same way, I just had to remind churches, guys, churches plant churches, and because that wasn't how it was done. And so, and I kind of felt like I was going to die on that hill, to
Why
be
what
honest.
again, why do you say it wasn't being done? Like what is it that you see in the church, especially in the SBC world? Like what was the counterintuitive thing that was happening where they say we are planting churches, we're giving to this or we're
Yeah,
doing that?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
what's
There wasn't a personal responsibility for the local church to look within and to send their best, like what we see in Acts 13, 1 through 3. That was missing in the ethos of the local church, right? And so here we are, we're trying to help churches to go, listen, the way we plant churches isn't to send your guy to NC Baptist. The way we plant churches is for us to come alongside of you and to help you to raise up within, and man, we'll help you in the places where you need help. I mean, we can provide a robust assessment that says whether or not a couple is ready for the rigors of church planning. We will provide excellent resources in training that will make sure that they're getting the questions answered. We're going to provide things like project management. Of course, we're going to come along and help you to build resources, not just from us, but from supporting churches that are come alongside of you. Man, we'll help you to, oh, you need a residency? You don't know how to get a guy from the pew to planting? Well, we can come alongside of you and help you with that. And so creating those pathways, making church planting a pathway. I'll say it like this, Corey. I was meeting with a pastor of a large church one day, and they wanted to become a sending church. They wanted to get involved in what it looks like to be a church planting church. And he says to me, he asked a really good question. He says, "Man, in the years that I've been here, I've had people come and say they felt like God was calling them to missions. I've had people say like God's calling me to student ministry, to go to seminary. He just went through the list of all the things. He said, I've never had anyone say, I feel like God is calling me to plant. He said, why do you think that is? And it kind of struck me because nobody had ever asked me that before. And I credit the Holy Spirit with this answer. It was kind of like, well, why would they? And he kind of looked at me a little bit odd. And I said, man, you're this great church. Everything that you mentioned, they have an on-ramp to that. They've met missionaries. They've met people that went to seminary. They've met people who felt called to ministry. But this church has no history of church planting. And so it's not even a discussion. So the way for if you want this church to begin planting churches from within, man, you are going to have to begin to help them to create sending culture within this church, and that it would become something that this is something that we do. And I think that that's a good description of something that was missing in many of our churches. I honestly believe that the second biggest deficit in churches all over the world, not just in North Carolina, I think number one is just disciple making culture, where we're really raising up followers of Jesus that help other people to follow Jesus. I think number two is just sending culture. The fact that God didn't save you to come here necessarily and just stay here forever, but God brought you here to be a part of this family, some of you for a season, and that he might send you out to carry the gospel to other places. That's not just a church planner thing. That's a follower of Jesus issue.
Yeah, as you're sitting there talking about some of the things that Ascendancy is able to do, like trying to switch the narrative from, just come to the denomination, we'll do it for you, to
Yeah,
no, like we want to put this. It made me think about Home Depot, like, you can do it and we can help.
we can help. Yep.
Um, so, within that, like Mike, when you think about Carolina Movement and Send NC, like where do you see the genius of collaboration within differing networks and not being competition, but being collaborative?
Yeah. Corey, that's sometimes that's a hard question because I think that competition is buried deep within our sinful selves. And sometimes what happens is instead of seeing collaboration, we see different networks and things that are happening there. And so we all have our little tribes. We all have our barriers and our boundaries. We partner with a lot of with multiple different organizations here in North Carolina, whether it be Carolina Movement or Pillar Network. We've got Praetorium Project, to name just a few. We've got multiple groups that we work with. And man, it's just one of those things where you're finding the opportunity for collaboration within those. One of the things that helps me with Carolina Movement is the fact that I was there. I was there at the very beginning of this thing, and this was born out of our hearts and a need that was there. And it's one of those issues like we had to figure out how do we help planners that don't have sending churches. They didn't. How do we help them to get some support around them and not feel like they're an island unto themselves? Because I mean, you and I both know as people that were in around in those days, you kind of we were really struggling with where do we fit in the grand narrative of church planning life. We were so busy planning our churches that it was hard to bring people together. And and it, even though I feel like today there definitely is tribe within Ascendancy. I mean, and obviously because that's such a big part of my heart, and it's kind of how we started our work together, right? When I come to NC Baptist, we're bringing tribe into this thing, and there's certainly a different fabric and context of people working together within the work that we're doing in NC Baptist. As a matter of fact, I mean, so many of our endorsed Send NC planners are also partnered through Carolina Movement, and they don't just find tribe with us; they
How
find
do you
tribe
see
within
how
that
do you
as
see
well.
how do you see that working though? Like what is it about those two things that they can overlap? Because not in every different network or association can that kind of thing happen. How is it that a Carolina Movement Church and a Send NC Church can still coexist?
Yeah. Well, you know, let me lay it out like this. Everybody who's going to be one of our planters, a Send NC planner, an endorsed planner, they have to go through the process from beginning to end, right? And so they're going to go through our assessment retreat. As a matter of fact, you've got somebody coming to our assessment retreat in August, right?
Yeah.
And Eric is going to be coming, and you're going to be coming as his, I guess, as his sending church rep. Somebody's coming as a sending church rep, and together we're partnering with you in that. And so they're going through that, and we're able to provide the churches assessment. We're able to provide endorsement, training, funding, building out residency, all those type of things. I think some of what our planners find in their relationship with Carolina Movement is obviously you guys are helping them to connect churches that want to support church planning. I mean, you're doing a great job of putting those guys up, and you're putting them on the platform, and here's such, and he's going to be one of our planters, and he's going to be planting, and they get to know their story. And so it gives them the opportunity to raise funds through you guys and just make sure that they have a solid group of churches that are supporting them in the church planting work. But I think another place that you guys have provided help is just in the planner care option. Just the lunches that you guys do across the state and bringing planners into a room, even if it's just for, it doesn't have to be, you get there and somebody's going to preach at you for an hour. Well, but literally just sitting across the table from other people that are either where you're at, they're where you want to be, or they're looking to be where you are at. So just bringing people together in that way, and knowing some of the guys that are bringing those together, just love seeing what that looks like partnership wise.
And what Mike's talking about is all throughout the state here in North Carolina, Carolina Movement has about 15 different lunches. You can go to our website and check out the lunch locations. You don't have to plan a church. There's no agenda at these lunches. It's truly just relationship. Hang out, eat good food, hang out with some cool people, and be better together. Mike,
Right.
one of the things we've been talking about is just that idea of sending culture.
Hmm.
And I really want you to talk to the people about, the pastor who maybe has 50 people, whether they're 50 years old or 50 days old, the church at 100, the church at 250. So not the mega churches, not the churches who have everything that they need.
Hmm.
What do you think that church at 100 or 50 can do today to prep for being a church that sends tomorrow? They may not be able to send $100,000 today or 50
Hmm.
people. What can they do?
Well, I think I said it earlier, but just to reemphasize, every church has a role to play in church planning. I mean, it's not a mega church thing. It's not a church planning church thing. Like, I think it's something that was lost. And I mean, we are a church planting. And when I say we, I'm talking about like Southern Baptists in general, NC Baptists in general. We are a church planting movement that forgot that we were a church planting movement, right? And so, basically the SBC was started through the Sandy Creek revival, which happened right here in North Carolina, right? And so, just reminding people of the fact that church planting isn't like this other thing that those people do, but that we are called, I believe, by the Lord to continue to reproduce, to continue, just like Paul, sending letters back, securing support for the churches that have been planted along the missionary journeys. I think that is something that all of our churches can be a part of. Now, how does this apply to those smaller churches, or maybe churches that church planning isn't even on their radar? It's really easy to say, well, we give to Annie Armstrong Easter offering, or we give to the cooperative program, or we give to the North Carolina missions offering, which, like about a third of that comes to church planning right here in North Carolina. It's really easy to go, well, we are participating, we give to these offerings. And yes, that's true. But it's not saying that writing a check doesn't mean something, man. It means so much, and it's such a large part. But I think that churches that aren't in that space yet are really missing out on participating with an individual church planner to become what we call a supporting church. A supporting church is really a church that, a lot of times we think of the financial, but I usually say it like this: a supporting church supports a planter relationally, so they have a relationship with them. We would say prayerfully, like they're taking time to pray for a particular planner and lift up he and his family. Missionally, like they can go and be a part of seeing that church get off the ground. I think about when you guys launched, and there were churches that came on the weekend before. I think there was like a torrential rainstorm or something that happened as you guys were going around prayer walking and dropping.
Point Church in Raleigh, man. They sent about
Man,
20 college students to
yes,
come
sir.
hand out flyers in the pouring rain and then watch our
Yeah,
kids that first Sunday.
absolutely. And I'm telling people all the time, going, man, I know that we love to see our churches go overseas on mission, and maybe we have a partnership in New York City, and we go up there. Man, you can have a partnership right here in North Carolina missionally. You could take a 1 day mission trip where the church goes up and prayer walks, or helps to clean something up, or maybe even watches kids, or helps with a block party or something like that. So relationally, prayerfully, missionally, and of course financially, man. And any church can do that. Any church can be a part of that. And I'm telling churches all the time, you probably use this language as well, but I'm going, man, claim that planter. Like, claim that. You talk about him as, this is the church that we're planting in Bun Level, right? And this is Pastor Ralph and his wife Sherry, right? And they are, and man, Put him on the screen, put his family on the screen, celebrate the birthdays, bring him in to preach. This is our church planner. Because I think that when we do that, even as a supporting church, Corey, I think that what happens is God uses that to help our church to understand that church planning is something that is important to us. We actually build sending culture in these ways, and I think it's really important to if for the pastor to lead his leadership and his congregation to develop sending culture and to understand that we can be a great part of new churches,
Hey, Mike, how do you eat elephant?
one bite at a time.
And that's what you just said, right? But at
Yep,
first, it starts with the heart. I want to eat the elephant.
absolutely.
I want to eat the elephant. I want to be a part of church planting. Doesn't matter if you have two people, 2,000. You can do something.
Yep, you sure
You can
can.
do something.
Absolutely.
Well, hey guys, I want to say thank you to Mike and for Send NC. Mike's actually going to be with us at our gathering this October 7th and 8th. So I hope you guys will come join us. Mike will be leading a breakout about how to build pipelines for planter development, for discipleship, just to raise up leaders, all that good stuff. Mike, we look forward to seeing you back here in October. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Ben. Great to be with you.
All right, check us out next week as we do another conversation, and we'll see you guys then.